Okay, so this is a very different episode of Drive Home Reviews meets Abbott and Costello because we got to take a little bit of time out of talking about their movies, and we have to take a detour and discuss some real life issues. I didn't quite expect to do this originally, but when I was starting to plan out this series and how I wanted to talk about certain things, I knew that this period of their life was coming, and I kind of made the decision early that we need to take a break from discussing their films and talk about this time in their lives, because it's a very crucial turning point. Aside from the fact that it marks the end of the early chapter of their career, their first 11 movies. And when they return, things are going to change up a bit. Formulas are going to change up. The attitude's going to change up. Things are going to be different when they finally get back to making their films. But also, this time in their life gives real insight into the actual character of Bud and Lou. And I don't mean the characters they played on stage. I mean the people they were. When I tell you how important Abbott and Costello are to me, I don't just mean as nostalgic figures, but these guys are some of my heroes. Who they were, not only what they did entertainment-wise, but what they did as people, is a big influence on me. And it's this unfortunate chapter of their history that kind of cements that. So, just as a recap, Bud and Lou had been keeping an insane schedule for the last 2-3 years. They had made 11 movies in just under 2.5 years. And again, that's with very little downtime in between. It's movie. And then when the war broke out, it was movie tour. We've talked about the insanity of the tour schedule that they kept. And I don't think I've said it. If I have said it, it deserves repeating. Bud and Lou raised over $80 million for the war effort, in war bonds or in other donations. $80 million. Today, that would be an insane amount. Considering how the pricings were different back then, it's even more insane. It comes out to about $8 billion or something. I forget what the exact rate of inflation is, but it's several billion in today's currency. So they did a lot. And as we said in the last episode, that kind of schedule catches up with you. And it caught up with them in a hard way. And it hit Lou. Lou came down with rheumatic fever, which is a disease of the heart. And he was forbidden from working for a year. He had to basically convalesce and heal up. One story that comes out of this is that, of course, when he was sick, he was getting a lot of letters from people, a lot of letters of support, and he kind of heartbroken to find that a lot of those letters were coming from children who were affected with the same disease. So, in typical big kid Lou Costello fashion, he and Bud spearheaded a campaign to raise awareness, and they added a wing for rheumatic fever study at one of the hospitals in Los Angeles. I forget how much it cost them, but they paid for it out of pocket. To help the kids. He did this to help the children. He said, I'm going to misquote here a little bit, he said that there's got to be a reason why I'm not dead, and it has to be because the guy upstairs wants me to help these kids. So even convalescing, they were still doing their part, and they were still helping, and I think that's amazing. The truly amazing thing comes, unfortunately, towards the end of October of that year. So Lou had been convalescing. He'd been healing up. He'd been getting better. I also left out, when I'm talking about their schedule, they were also doing their own radio show. So add that on top of touring and movies and all that. So October comes along, and Lou's well enough, he's finally going to return to work. He's finally going to go back, and he is finally going to be on the radio show again. And this is a big thing. You know, everybody knew he'd been sick, and it was a big welcome back for him. The day of the broadcast, that afternoon, his son, Lou Costello Jr., whom they had nicknamed Butch, drowned in the family pool. And as you can imagine, this was a devastating blow for everybody, but Lou Costello in particular. It was a harsh blow to him, and especially when you consider that he's coming off of, you know, being ill. I mean, that must have. I can't imagine. I hope to God I never have to imagine, and I'm sure a lot of people feel that way. But here's where the really remarkable thing comes in. So this happens, and they get word to the radio show, and of course all these people are calling in saying, "I'll volunteer. I'll fill in for him." Now, obviously, he's not going to show up, and Lou said, "No, I'm going to go do the show. I am going to go do the performance." And everyone's saying, "No, you can't do that." And I forget who he said this to. The story varies depending on which research I do. But one of the things he said, his justification for going on was, he said, I had asked Annie, his wife, he said, I had asked Annie to keep my baby up late tonight to see if he would recognize my voice on the radio. And wherever God has taken my little boy, I want him to hear me. So Lou went and he did the show. If you work in the theater, if you're a performer and you work especially in live theater, you know the phrase, the show must go on. You know that phrase, you live by it. People who aren't involved, they don't understand to what level some theater folk take that. I've known people who have gone on and performed the day after their spouses have died. You know, I have gone on and performed the day after. I've performed with 104-degree fever. I'm not saying that was a smart thing, but I've done it. I went on and performed the day after, the week after we had to put my dog down. I know that doesn't compare, obviously, but you know, for certain performers, that credo of the show must go on, it is a mantra. It is not just a catchphrase. It's something to live by. And everybody has their own breaking point and their own cutoff line or their own reason for doing it. I don't think he did it for the show. I think he did it for himself and, you know, that desire to get his voice out there, hope, you know, so that his son could hear it. So that's one quote that comes out of this. This other one I brought along. I want to read this verbatim because I think this is an amazing quote from Bud Abbott. So I don't want to misquote it. So this is Abbott and Costello in Hollywood. This is the book that I have most of the research for these episodes out of. You can see it's pretty beat up. I've had this since junior high. I've had this book a long time. I don't know if you can still get it. I don't know if it's still in print. You might be able to find it on eBay or something like that. But it's a hell of a book, especially for Abbott and Costello fans. So I want to read this to you. This is the quote that Bud Abbott said at the end of the show. Apparently the show even had a bit about life insurance that Lou did. I mean, that's yeah. So after the show, and again, they did not inform the audience. They did not tell anybody in the live audience about this. Very few people outside of the Costello circle knew. So the show ends, and Bud comes on, and he says the following, and I quote, "Ladies and gentlemen, now that our program is over and we have done our best to entertain you, I would like to take a moment to pay tribute to my best friend and a man who has more courage than I have ever seen displayed in the theater. Tonight, the old expression, the show must go on, was brought home to all of us on this program more clearly than ever before. Just a short time before our broadcast started, Lou Costello was told that his baby son, who would have been 1 year old in a couple of days, had died. In the face of this greatest tragedy which can come to any man, Lou Costello went on tonight so that you, the radio audience, would not be disappointed. There is nothing more I can say except I know you all join me in expressing our deepest sympathy to a great trooper. Good night. Very eloquent. And as far as I know, this was not written. This was Bud just talking. You can see how eloquent he was. He was a very eloquent man. So as you can imagine, this was a shock and a turning point for Lou Costello as a person. A lot of people said that after this, as you could expect, he was not the same person. He was that childlike character of him was forever altered by this. And this is important to bring up, I think, not just to recognize who he was as a person, but to also recognize that as we go forward into some of these movies, some of these next ones back, he's going to be a little off. He's still a professional. He still does an amazing job, but knowing kind of what happened just prior to some of these films, you can see that innocence and that kind of little cherub personality, it's going to take a while for that to get back to kind of a high point. It's never going to be as high as it was in these early films. Just because that little spark of life has gone out of him a bit. Two really important things to talk about before we wrap up. Just some points of interest. So his wife had a bracelet with their baby's name on it, and gave it to Lou, and Lou had it welded onto his wrist so it could never be taken off. And as we watch some of these upcoming movies in their middle and late period, you'll be able to see the bracelet. It's there. Relating back to the story about the children with rheumatic fever. Sorry, just waiting for this guy to get past. To help with the healing process, and because of his love of children, Lou decided that he was going to do something to kind of help kids. That's what he does, or did. And so, with Bud's help, chipping in dollar for dollar, they established the Lou Costello Jr. Recreation Center in Los Angeles. This was a place where kids could go and have fun and get exercise and be athletic. It is still in operation today. From what I understand from their Facebook page, they're always in need of donations. If you're a fan and you want to help, you can always look them up and donate. But again, I think that speaks to the people that they were, that hit by this incredible tragedy, to help themselves heal, they created something that helped a lot of people. So again, a little bit more serious than I usually like to get with when talking about Abbott and Costello, but it's an important point in their life. It's an important point in their history. And I think it's something that you need to know, that people should know about, what kind of men they were, and just how they faced adversity, and how they helped each other through, and how they were always there to help someone else through. So I don't have a big send-off here, and as you've noticed, we've changed the aesthetics. The film crew is not present. I didn't want to make light of this situation. But when we return, we'll talk more about their comedy, and we'll get back to talking about their movies, because the show must go on. And even though there is going to be an after effect, they still have a lot of career left and a lot of great films coming up. So when we return, we will talk about their next film back. And again, the timeline is a little difficult to distinguish here. But we'll talk about Abbott and Costello taking that next step. And this time, they're going to be taking their particular brand of comedy in society. So thank you for joining me for this little discussion. And we will return next time with more Abbott and Costello comedy.